Wow, we just got a lot of news about Road to UFC. Season 3 set for May 18th and 19th in Shanghai. If you don't know me, my name is Chris, and I report on Asian MMA news. I have been reporting on all 3 seasons of Road to UFC extensively, breaking down a lot of those fights and breaking, honestly, a lot of the fights as well. Um, I had the last couple days, I knew pretty much every single fight except for the non-tournament fights for the tournament, and was just kind of waiting for the UFC to announce them. I'm guessing the reason why it took so long, uh, as you could imagine, there's a lot of contracts to be signed. There's a lot of logistics to work out. There was at least one replacement that we know of. So a lot to figure out. Managing what, like 40 fighters and announcing all those fights takes a lot of work. So I definitely understand the delay. But we have 4 tournaments. We have flyweight, bantamweight, and featherweight, and then not lightweight, but strawweight. Of course, I've already told you about that. Broke all those fights several weeks ago. Then we've got 4 non-tournament fights, just as usual. So the the big surprise, I think, is well, okay, so Wang Tsong is in the tournament, or not in the tournament. She is in a non-tournament fight against someone named Paula Luna, who is from Peru. I would say Wang is probably the biggest prospect of this whole season, even though she's in a non-tournament fight. She has a ton of hype behind her. Chinese fighter with a kickboxing background, has a win over Valentina Shevchenko, has looked like a killer ever since she has switched to MMA. She's part of the UFC PI system, 4-0 as a pro, and basically the UFC is kind of just like wanting her to get more and more experience before they sign her. But I have been told that if Wang Tsong gets a finish in this fight, then the UFC will absolutely sign her. They could even sign her off of a dominant decision as well. The choice of Paula Luna was a little bit odd to me. She's a 5-2 flyweight out of Peru. Not the Peruvian part. I mean, when you're talking about women's flyweight, you're probably going to have to look outside of Asia for the most part. So I'm not surprised they got someone outside of Asia, but just that they got Paula Luna, I feel like she is still a couple stages away from being in the UFC. Unless she can get a big win over Wang Tsong, would be interesting. But that's the big fight. Of course, that's kind of been public for a while. Let me go through. I'm not going to go in all these in detail. A lot of these have already been public for a little bit. But we've got flyweight. We've got Choi Dong-hoon versus Jinyu Shirie. We've got In Shuai versus Kiru Singh Sahota. Ruel Panyales versus Toki Matsui. And then a fight that I've known about for a long time, but was told not to announce it, was the Angad Bisht against John Almanza fight. I'm really happy that we've got 2 Filipino guys in this tournament. I feel like Angad Bisht is a pretty tough matchup for Almanza, but who knows? Anything could happen. Not really sure how they will do. I'm also really glad to see Angad Bisht in this tournament. India, I think, has not always had the best talent selection or the best talent available. Or a lot of the best Indian fighters had not been available for Road to UFC. So I'm really glad they got Angad. He's a Matrix Fight Night flyweight champion, and honestly, I would say one of the best overall prospects out of India. Superb grappler, really sharp guy. So they finally got a really top-notch prospect out of India, and I'm happy to see that. Bantamweight tournament, we've got Daramisi Jaupasi versus Ren Ozaki. We've got Bargung Jila against Li Yunfeng, which is surprising. That was news to me just because it was supposed to be Kantharaj Agasa out of India, a 1 championship veteran. Supposed to be him against Bargung, but I guess I don't know the reason, but Kantharaj is out, and in his place is Li Yunfeng. Li Yunfeng is a Chinese fighter that for a little while I was really high on this guy. He had some amazing finishes over some lower level guys, and then he kind of hit a rough patch. I think he's on a little bit of a losing streak, so I was surprised to see him. He definitely was not like a first or second choice, but Um, he does have potential. I feel like this is a really super tough matchup against Baragung. Also in the tournament, Yusu Young, I would say he's probably one of the top overall prospects as well. Amazing fighter, amazing grappler. Yusu Young is fighting Shohei Nosei. Kim Kyo Sung, who is a backup in last year's tournament, is fighting Tokitaka Nakanishi, who is a Pancrase champion, I believe. So some interesting choices there. They bring back Shohei for the third time. He looked better last year. He didn't look great the first year. Last year he looked a lot better, and then he's won since the tournament last year. So it makes sense. You know, some of these guys they bring back over and over and over again. On the one hand, I'm like, why do they keep giving them chances? On the other hand, it's just I think it's a good way just to give more experience in the tournament and just give more quality to the overall tournament. So I think in that regard, it's really useful. Okay, the featherweight tournament is Xiebin versus Hamid Amiri, Song Young Jae versus Masuto Kawana, Ju Kang Jie versus Tetsuya Ando, another one veteran, and Hong Jun Young versus Shin Haraguchi. Shin Haraguchi is dropping down to featherweight. Personally, I would have liked to see him take a year off and kind of get some more wins on the regional scene, but whatever, he's dropping down a weight class. Maybe he got, all the way to the finals last year. I think dropping down a weight class is a great idea, and maybe we'll see him win this year. He's a strong wrestler. You also got Masuto Kawana. He's a really strong wrestler. Shia Bean, I think, is way improved from his last appearance in the tournament. And Hamid Amiri is definitely an odd choice. This is a fight that I broke a few weeks ago, but Jukong Jie, I really like that choice as well. Overall, featherweight, I thought was going to be really deep, but there's been some interesting choices in there. I think Song Young Jae is a great choice. Originally, Kim Tae-kyun was supposed to be in this featherweight tournament. I heard that from him directly that he was going to be in it. So I may need to follow up with him and see what happened unless he announces it himself. But he's not in the tournament. He is a guy that I think a lot of people were saying he was the number one prospect out of all of Korea. So I was honestly like a little bit indignant about him even joining the tournament as a whole, just because I thought he should either go to like contender series or just sign outright with the UFC instead of fighting 3 times. So I don't know what the plan is there or if he had an injury or something, but he's not in it, and much to the relief of all the other featherweights because he is a really, really tough dude. All right, and then the strawweight tournament, you probably already know about this. I've announced this before. Donghua Xiang versus Priya Sharma, Feng Chaocan against Kieran Singh, Shi Ming against Xiao Yadam, and Huang Fei'er against Miki Motono. So, yeah, I've already kind of talked through those fights. Not going to go over them again. And then the non-tournament fights, which I did not see the UFC announce on their English Instagram channel, but I did see those on their Chinese WeChat channel. These fights are Wang Cong versus Paola Luna. I already kind of touched on that. Lisa Kryako versus Yan Chi Hui. Love that fight. That is a sick fight. Lisa is one of the top prospects, maybe the top women's prospect out of Australia. And she's also fought with One Friday Fights, 7-1 record, really sharp fighter. And she's fighting Yan Chi Hui, who had that contender series loss, looked good for a little bit, and then has kind of struggled to get fights ever since then. Has been a little bit in limbo. Not really sure what the whole story is there, but really glad that she has an opportunity to fight back into the UFC. If she can beat Lisa, I feel like that should get her in. Also, the same for Lisa. Jan is a great prospect as well. So that is an exceptional fight. Love that fight. And then some interesting ones here. Kim Han Sol versus Bate Bol. Last year it was Kiwon Bean versus Bate Bol, and now you've got him fighting Kim Han Sol. Kim Han Sol, 1-1 with Road to UFC, both in non-tournament fights. He last lost against Tailaka Nuaraji, who has a fight booked for Niza. This is, I don't know, an interesting fight. I think it's fine to give both guys another fight. It just seems like there's a lot of other fighters outside of the ones that were chosen for the tournament that I would have given a shot. Baltai Bowl is fine though. That fight I believe is at welterweight, and then Kiwon Bean versus Tetsuya Saika of Japan. I don't know much about Saika. I think he's got like an 11-3, 11-4 record. He's 33 years old, and he's fighting Kiwon Bean, who's also had a lot of chances with Road to UFC. So there are a lot of fighters that have honestly have had a lot of chances with Road to UFC. And the interesting thing, and John Hyun Ko just pointed this out to me on Twitter a few minutes ago, that a lot of these Korean fighters that you're kind of surprised to see are from Korean, Team Korean Zombie in South Korea. So I feel like there's a lot of other fighters that maybe could have or should have gotten the shot. There is one guy that Ko Seok-hyun, he is the AFC middleweight champion, and I had heard that he was going to fight in a welterweight non-tournament fight, but now there are other plans for him, and I am really hoping to break that news to you because I am really, really excited about that. I'm just trying to confirm a few things, and then I'll see if I can break that for you. But don't fear about Ko Seok-hyun. He's being taken care of. That's all I can say about that. But so yeah, this goes down May 18th, May 19th, Shanghai PI in Shanghai. I think that's a great place for them to hold these Road to UFC events. And so much so that the semifinals will also take place in Shanghai at the UFC PI. So rather than doing these fights in like a arena that's a tenth of the way full, and trying to plan a UFC event to kind of align with it, they're just going to go back to the PI for the semifinals, which I think makes a lot of sense because, they go somewhere like Singapore. They have the Singapore indoor stadium. They rent it for a full day. And then the next day or the day before, they have it for Road to UFC, and there's 500, 1,000 people in the arena. It's really, really empty. They've rented out the whole arena. It's just kind of a really weird vibe. And, that's not that I care about this, but doesn't really make financial sense for the UFC. And this way, hopefully it's a little bit simpler with visas. I know some guys have shorter visas where they're just a couple days or a few weeks, but hopefully, it's a little easier to get a visa for China twice than it is a visa getting one to China and then to whatever country, Indonesia or whatever. So, yeah, I don't know if that's too much of a barrier, but the semis will be, I don't know the date on that, but probably sometime in September, I would think. I saw a few questions in there. I answered the one about Kim Tae-kyun. Let me just see what's going on here. Why do I see more Road to UFC announcements on this channel than the UFC itself? Doing the Lord's work, man. Doing the Lord's work. They were pretty good at announcing everything in conjunction throughout all their Asian social media channels. But yeah, I mean, if I'm the main YouTube channel talking about Road to UFC, then so be it. I love having that role. Yeah, answered the one about Kim Tae-kyun. Let's see. They're not popping up for me. There we go. But they pretend to care about the Asian market, but the UFC does a poor job promoting the Asian talent. I agree. There are some exceptions, but for the most part, I think they're just to promoting the Asian fighters to American bases, especially live events like Road to UFC. It's it's a really hard time zone, time slot to try to get people to care about and wake up for. So I get that part. But, I agree. I feel like Road to UFC could use some repackaging, a bump up. As I think about the first year that I was covering Road to UFC 2 years ago, I was really the only person talking about it. And just in terms of competition of trying to break news, things like that, there was no competition. It was pretty much all me. And now there are so many more people that care about Road to UFC. I get hit up all the time from Indian fans, Indonesian fans, even this time around Afghani fans. I gained like 100 Afghani followers on my Instagram just from the Hamid Amiri announcement. So it's really interesting, just to see how it has grown. And I wonder, like, is there going to be a point where they give it a little bit more love? I mean, you think about Contender Series, there's challenges kind of doing that, but that's something where it's every week, where Road UFC is only 3 times a year, and I feel like there is a lot of opportunity there. I would say especially the semifinals and finals. That's where you're getting the best talent, and all the guys in there have a 50-50 shot of being in the UFC. So, there's a lot better return on investment of promoting the fighters. I agree. But I think I think if it, it's cyclical. It's like if it grows in popularity, they promote it more. But if they promote it more, then it grows in popularity. So I agree. But I'm here for the ride. So are you. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to be releasing a lot of content on Road to UFC on this YouTube channel over the next couple weeks. So subscribe to the channel and be looking forward to that. We'll see you next time.